Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Circle. Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 4th November 2022, and the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. So let us start the discussion. This editorial on page number 8 has been written in the context of one of the important issues in Indian polity, and that is related to defamation. In this, there is a debate that defamation should be decriminalized. So let us try and understand this issue in detail with all aspects of defamation and should it be decriminalized or not. The issue here is that the defamation has become a tool to silence the critics, which is often used by influential and powerful people to accuse or blame the victims of defaming them. So in this discussion, we will first look at what is meant by defamation and what type of laws exist regarding the defamation in India. Also, we'll look at the constitutional angle as to how the defamation law stands against the constitutional right or the fundamental right that has been provided under the Article 19, that is, right to freedom of speech. Further, there has been an argument in India that the criminal defamation law that exists in India has been used to silence the critics or the victims themselves. And that is why there is a debate that should defamation remain as a criminal offense or not. So let us look at all these angles related to the issue of defamation, and they can be very important for us from General Studies paper 2 point of view under the Constitution and Polity. Now, defamation is used as a general term for a legal claim involving injury to one's reputation that is caused by a false statement of fact. So simply it refers to the act of publication of defamatory content that lowers the reputation of an individual or an entity when observed through the perspective of an ordinary man. So basically it is any act of publication of content that lowers the reputation of any individual or an entity. Now, as far as the defamation in India is concerned, it is termed as both civil as well as a criminal offense. In civil offense, a person who is defamed can either move to high court or subordinate courts and seek damages in the form of monetary compensation, and there is no punishment in the form of jail sentence if there is a civil defamation lawsuit that has been filed in either high court or the subordinate courts. As far as the criminal defamation is concerned, the person against whom a defamation case is filed might be sentenced to 2 years imprisonment or fined, or both will be given. So that is what defamation means, and these are the two ways in which remedies are available against defamation in India. Now, we all know that in the Indian Constitution, in the fundamental rights, we have been provided in the Article 19 the right to freedom of speech. However, reasonable restrictions have been imposed on the right to freedom of speech. And these reasonable restrictions have been provided in the form of contempt of court, defamation, or incitement to an offense. That is, you cannot use your right to freedom of speech in order to bring out contempt of the court, defamation to any person or entity, and incitement of an offense in the country. So accordingly, defamation has been provided as an exception to the right to freedom of speech under the Constitution of India. Now, besides being provided as an exception under the Indian Constitution, there are legal provisions related to the defamation law. And there are sections 499 and 500 of the Indian Penal Code that deal with the defamation, or the legal provisions related to defamation have been provided in these sections of the Indian Penal Code. Now, the section 499 defines the offense of defamation, while the section 500 defines the punishment for it. So under section 499, defamation has been defined as whoever by words either spoken or intended to be read, or by signs or by visible representation, makes or publishes any imputation concerning any person intending to harm, or knowing or having reason to believe that such imputation will harm the reputation of such person, is said except in cases hereinafter expected to defame that person. So this is basically legal language that has been used in this section 499. However, what concerns us is that it brings or lowers down the reputation of a person by the means of publication of any kind of information related to that particular person. And regarding the punishment, the section 500 reads that whoever defames another shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 2 years or fine or with both. Now, one of the issues that have been raised against defamation is that the criminal defamation is used to silence the critics or the victims themselves. And as such, let us look at this angle as to why defamation has been provided as a crime in the law. Now, defamation has been considered as a crime because reputation is an asset to each and everyone, and any damage to such asset can be legally dealt with, and defamation laws have been enacted to prevent person maliciously using their right to freedom of speech and expression against any person by the intention of lowering the reputation of that particular person. So in this regard, let us look at the debate that has started in India, that should the defamation remain a criminal offense in India. So in this regard, we will be looking at arguments in favor of defamation as a criminal offense and also arguments against defamation as a criminal offense. So first, let us start with arguments in favor of defamation remaining a criminal offense. Now, the arguments that are in favor of defamation remaining a criminal offense include the income inequality that exists in our society, the anonymity that has been provided by the internet in India. Further, Article 21 provides for the protection of dignity of individuals, and also changes that have been made from time to time regarding the interpretation of the legal provisions related to defamation in India. And all these arguments highlight that defamation should still remain a criminal offense in India. Now, as far as income inequality is concerned, it has been said that defamation should remain a penal offense in India, as the defamer may be too poor to compensate the victim in some cases. However, the same argument can be used against defamation remaining a criminal offense. This is because the rich and the powerful people in the society can use the provisions of the criminal law related to the defamation to harass the poor people. So the inequality or the income inequality argument can be used both in the favor of defamation remaining a criminal offense as well as an argument against the criminal law related to the defamation. Second argument in favor of keeping defamation as a criminal offense is the anonymity that is provided by the internet. Now, it is being said that there is no mechanism to censor the internet from inside, and that is why online defamation could only be adequately countered by retaining defamation as a criminal offense. That is, if defamation remains a criminal offense, there will be a kind of deterrence in the society, especially on the internet where anonymity is a major issue. And such anonymity can be used by various people in the society to defame or lower the reputation of various influential and important people. The third argument in favor of keeping defamation as a criminal offense is related to the fundamental right that has been provided in the Article 21. And as we all know that the Article 21 provides for the protection of dignity of individuals. And as such, the criminalization of defamation is a part of the government's or the state's compelling interest to protect the right to dignity and good reputation of its citizens. So this Article 21 obligates the Indian state to protect the dignity of its citizens. And accordingly, it is being argued that by the means of a criminal law that exists related to defamation, the state or the government can protect the rights of the individuals or the dignity of the individuals in a society. Another argument related to keeping defamation as a criminal offense is that various changes have been made from time to time in the sections 499 and 500 of the Indian Penal Code. And in this regard, it has been said that 10 exceptions have been provided in the section 499 and 500 related to defamation law. And these exceptions clearly exclude from its ambit any speech that is truthful, made in good faith, or is for public good. That is, adequate protection has been provided in the sections 499 and 500 of the defamation law. And that is why it is being argued that as exceptions and protections have been provided under the criminal law itself related to defamation, the defamation should still remain as a criminal offense. However, there are various arguments that have been forwarded against defamation remaining a criminal offense. Now, the first argument against defamation remaining a criminal offense is that countries across the globe have decriminalized the defamation issue, and they consider defamation as a civil wrong only and not a criminal offense. In this background, the Human Rights Committee of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights called upon states to abolish criminal defamation, noting that it intimidates citizens and makes them shy away from exposing the wrongdoings that exist in the society. And this is a very common issue related to defamation, that it is used by the powerful people and it intimidates the normal citizens and makes them shy from exposing the wrongdoings of such powerful and influential people. And accordingly, there is a global trend which aims at decriminalizing the issue of defamation, and defamation is only a civil wrong in various developed countries of the world. And the second issue is, of course, related to the misuse of the criminal law related to defamation by influential and powerful people for intimidating the citizens of the country or also the weaker sections of the society. And that is why this judgment that has been provided by the court related to the defamation in the sexual harassment of the woman is a very important one. This is because it will motivate other women to come forward and tell their tales of sexual harassment at the hands of their bosses or the fellow employees at the workplaces. And that is why this is a very landmark judgment in this regard. Further, the process of prosecution under the criminal law related to defamation itself becomes a kind of punishment. And in this regard, the state or the governments have used it as a means to coerce media and political opponents also. Further, such a criminal law is also open to misuse by various groups or sections who claim that their feelings have been hurt or they have been insulted. And as such, they abuse such kind of criminal laws by initiating multiple proceedings in different places across the country. And that is how they aim at harassing the sane voices that exist in the society. Further, the argument against defamation creating harm to the public order is that the public order concerns have already been taken care of various other sections under the Indian Penal Code. And accordingly, acts that may harm public order are covered by sections 124, 153 and 153A. And as such, criminal defamation does not serve any overarching public interest. So clearly we have seen arguments in favor of keeping defamation as a criminal offense. Also we have seen the arguments against keeping defamation as a criminal offense. Now, although the Supreme Court had upheld the defamation as a criminal offense back in 2016, the recent judgment related to the sexual harassment at workplace under the Me Too campaign has highlighted that such a criminal law can be misused by influential people in the society. And this can lead to intimidation of the common citizens and especially weaker sections of the society who will refrain from coming forward and highlighting the various issues that they have faced. For example, in this case, the issue of sexual harassment was highlighted as late as 2018 when the act had already happened back in 1993. So that is why the criminal law related to defamation should once again be revisited. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 8 is related to the recent National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party which was held, which has anointed the President Xi Jinping for the third consecutive term. Now, this is a historical event in the history of China because Xi Jinping, who is all the more powerful because of this National Congress, is becoming the president for the third time. And this can have implications for the global geopolitics as well as for India. In this context, let us try and understand what exactly is this National Congress of the CPC and also what were the major decisions that were taken and what are the likely implications of this National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party on the geopolitics and on India. Now, if you look at the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, it is theoretically the highest body within the Chinese Communist Party. Now, you should be aware that the highest deliberative body in the China is the Chinese Communist Party. And this National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party is the one which is held regularly and is the highest decision-making body in China. This is the one which appoints new president. It deliberates on the important changes that are to be made to the constitution of the Chinese Communist Party and how is the Chinese Communist Party going to function in the near future. Or everything is decided by the National Congress. So the Congress is the public venue for top-level leadership changes in the Chinese Communist Party and is a formal event for changes to the party's constitution. And that is why National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party is very crucial for the internal dynamics of China, as well as what are the implications of this National Congress for the global geopolitics as well as for India. This is because this is the body which appoints the Chinese president, and at the same time it deliberates upon the internal issues as well as the foreign policy of China that Chinese government is likely to follow in the coming years. And that's why it is crucial for us to understand its outcomes first. So let us look at what were the outcomes at this 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, if you look at the outcomes of the 20th National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, first and the foremost and the most important outcome was that Xi Jinping was anointed the president for an unprecedented third term. Further, this National Congress has reinforced the grip of Chinese Communist Party on all institutions across China. The Chinese Communist Party is considered to be all-powerful. However, there are instances of internal dissent which needed to be curbed. And this National Congress has ensured that there is no dissent against the Chinese Communist Party. And this has reinforced the grip of the CPC on all the institutions in China, including its society, the government institutions, on every institution that exists in China. Now, regarding its foreign policy and how China sees its relationship with foreign countries, it was concluded by the Chinese Communist Party at this National Congress that the international public opinion was currently anti-China in nature. And China fears that such anti-China public opinion at an international level can be used to incite or overthrow the existing communist regime in China. And that is why, to counter such disruptive philosophies or any kind of international conspiracy to overthrow the communist regime, China considers that it has become necessary for the Communist Party of China to emphasize ideological coherence and internal discipline. And this is primarily being done in order to avoid the Soviet Union style collapse. In this line, you should be aware that the USSR had collapsed in 1990s. USSR was also a communist regime. However, it finally collapsed in 1990s and many countries became independent from the USSR. And all this was possible in case of the erstwhile USSR because the Communist Party in the USSR did not have great amount of control. And that is why China also fears that if the current Chinese Communist Party loses control over the institutions, it can lead to the collapse of the communist regime. And that is why it is reinforcing its grip over all the institutions in China, and that has been reinforced by the outcomes of the National Congress. In this line, to avoid the danger of Soviet-style collapse, which was caused by ideological laxity, corruption, divisions within the Communist Party of the erstwhile USSR, and attempts by outsiders to foment unrest. So China doesn't want a similar kind of collapse of the communist regime in China. Further, in terms of geopolitics, the objective of the China is to effectively reduce the authority and the power of the United States. And this was also reinforced at this National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. Further, the National Congress reiterated that the Chinese Communist Party's role is central to Chinese society and is critical to determining the Chinese role in the world affairs. In this line, the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party has also reiterated that its goal is to make China a modern socialist power by 2035. It also wants to boost its per capita income to the middle income levels and modernize the armed forces. And in all, it wants to make China great by 2049, or it wants to make China a great power by 2049. In this context, let us try and understand what would be the implications of the 20th National Congress on the global politics, as well as how China is going to behave in terms of its foreign policy, because the Chinese behavior has been very erratic in the last 2-3 years. Because we have seen confrontation with China in the Galwan Valley, China has been asserting itself in the South China Sea, and we saw recently the escalation along the Taiwan Strait. So in this line, it is being understood from the outcomes of the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, which has anointed Xi Jinping as the president for the third term, that Xi Jinping exercises more power and authority as compared to any of his predecessors, seconding only to Mao Zedong, who was the founder of the China. In this line, such power and authority can be exercised by it in India's neighborhood and particularly in the Indo-Pacific. However, the author has highlighted that China seeks to become a great power by 2049. But to achieve this hegemonic status, it has many tasks to complete. For example, it will have to make the Chinese society very cohesive in nature. It will have to improve its economy considerably in the near future because it is facing challenges presently. All these issues, and at the same time, it will have to modernize its armed forces. So these are some tasks that China still needs to complete in order to achieve a hegemonic status which can counter the superpower status of the United States of America. In such a scenario, it is expected that Xi Jinping would not act hastily to endanger such commanding position that he has currently in the Chinese Communist Party. And before any misadventure, the priority for Xi Jinping is likely to be to consolidate the control of the Chinese Communist Party over all institutions of the Chinese government. Further, it has been highlighted that China faces economic challenges because of the restrictions that have been imposed by the United States of America. So all these challenges that are faced by China makes everyone understand that China is not likely to do any misadventure. However, if you look at Chinese status in the regional affairs, it is expected that China might indulge itself in confrontation with India and Japan. And this it can do in order to ensure its leadership in Asia. Further, we are aware that India has been aligning with like-minded countries in the Indo-Pacific, including the United States of America, Japan, as well as Australia, and that is why India is being seen as one of the important recipients of the Western technology. So if India is seen as a major recipient of Western technology which is being denied to China presently, China would make it a point to use its economic might rather than military muscle to deter India's progress. However, we cannot expect that China might not use its military along the undefined border with India, which we have seen recently in case of Galwan conflict in 2022. So these were broad contours of the outcomes of the National Congress of the Chinese Communist Party and what are its implications for global geopolitics as well as for India. Now the topic that we have recently covered might not be very important for us from exam perspective. However, understanding the issue that is happening in the internal affairs of China might be important for us to understand how would China act in the near future in terms of its relations with India and also how China would act at a global geopolitical level. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 8 has been written in the context of a demand by the president of Vanuatu, which is a small island in the Pacific Ocean, under which he wanted the General Assembly to adopt a universal non-proliferation treaty to ban the use of fossil fuels across the world. Now, this is an unprecedented move because the matter related to climate change is being taken to the United Nations. However, the matters related to the climate change are normally discussed under the aegis of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change or the UNFCCC. And that is why a debate has started that is it prudent to take the debate related to climate change to the UN General Assembly. So let us try and understand this issue from three perspectives. First is that is it prudent to take the climate change related debate to the UN or is it possible to tackle climate change through the UN mandate? The second issue here is that there are certain countries which want complete phase out of the coal-based power plants as well as fossil fuels. However, in this line, we are aware that India is not ready to phase out the coal-related power plants as well as fossil fuels currently or absolutely. In this line, India has provided an alternative which is phasing down slowly and not phasing it out abruptly. So let us look at all these aspects that is it prudent to take the debate related to climate change to the UN General Assembly? Secondly, what are the arguments that are being forwarded to phase out coal completely? And also, why India is demanding a phase down and not a phase out? So in this line, the first debate is that why the UN mandate would not be prudent to handle the climate change. And the issues related to the climate change should not be taken to the UN or the UN Security Council. In this line, an attempt has been made in the past in the UN to treat the matter of climate change as that of global security, and requests have been made to UN Security Council to resolve it. However, such demands were dropped because of opposition of most of the global south countries or countries which are underdeveloped or are in developing stage of economic growth. And these developing countries or global south see this as an attempt to address the climate change not through international cooperation or consensus, but it is seen as solving the issue of climate change or addressing the issue of climate change by imposing the wish of a selected few countries on others. The second important issue that was highlighted by the president of Vanuatu was that there should be complete phase out of the coal. In this line, let us look at what are the arguments which demand the coal phase out completely. In this line, it is said that coal is the most carbon intensive fossil fuel and phasing it out is a key step to achieve the emissions reductions which are needed to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade as is enshrined in the Paris Agreement of the UNFCCC. In this line, the International Energy Agency's recent Net Zero by 2050 report indicates that coal needs to be phased out in advanced economies by 2030 to keep 1.5 degree centigrade target. And it is being asserted that without a rapid phase out of the coal emissions, the goals of the Paris Agreement will be difficult to meet. In this line, let us look at why India is demanding a phase down of the coal and not a complete phase out. Let us look at the arguments forwarded by India. So, in this line, India's argument is that the coal accounts for over 50% of India's primary energy consumption and 70% of electricity generation. If you look at the investments that have been made by India, they are very recent. That is, over 50% of India's coal power plants were built in the last decade. And the weighted average age of all the coal plants in India is only 13 years, which means that India is not one of the biggest contributors or historically one of the important contributors to the global carbon emissions. It is only very late that India has started such huge amounts of coal power plants. Further, most of these power plants in India were funded by state-owned banks who have lent billions of rupees for the construction of these plants. Further, India also has massive coal reserves and it would want to harness to provide reliable power for people and industries. In this line, it is being highlighted that if India joins a coal phase-out deal, it will mean immediate backtracking from the coal mines auction policy, which will have a huge domestic political fallout. However, India is making proactive steps to make a transition from the coal-based energy requirements. That is, with current levels of technological developments and intermittent nature of renewable resources, India needs at least 20 to 30 years to shift towards renewable energy resource as the mainstay for energy security. In this line, it is being argued that if the transition to a world of lower emissions has to be sustainable, it must ensure equal access to energy and secure energy supplies to all and not just a few countries. And in this line, it is being highlighted that developed nations which have the resources as well as money to handle the issue of climate change, they should be the one who should be transitioning towards renewable energy. And they should be the one who should be supporting the developing countries to make a transition towards renewable energy, which is in line with India's principle of common but differentiated responsibilities principle, or the CBDR principle as it is called. So this is the whole debate about the climate change, and these are certain perspectives related to the recent issue that is coming up. However, concrete actions will be taken at COP27, which is being held in the near future in Egypt. With this, let's take up the next news article. This article on page number 1 is related to a gold mushroom nanoparticle which has been developed by the Indian scientists, which will help in improving the drug delivery. In this line, nanotechnology has widespread application in improving the drug delivery in the human body. And that is why it is assuming an important role in the medicinal drug delivery. So in this context, let us try and understand what this discovery is all about. And after that, let us try and understand what exactly is nanotechnology and what are the applications of nanotechnology in the field of medical science. Now, regarding the cortigold nanoparticles, Indian scientists have developed this cortigold nanoparticle which can make the drug delivery in the human body faster as well as exact. Further, these are derived from the synthesis of the extracts of Cordyceps militaris and gold salts. In this line, the Cordyceps militaris is a parasitic fungus. In this line, the gold salts are ionic chemical compounds of gold which are generally used in medicine. And the wild Cordyceps mushrooms are found in eastern belt of Himalayas. And by such a combination, the cortigold nanoparticle has been developed, which is likely to improve the drug delivery and also precise or precision based drug delivery. In this line, the benefits of the cortigold nanoparticles is that the penetration in the cells is more when the drug particles are smaller, and because it's a nanoparticle and they are smaller, and that is why the drug particles will penetrate more into the cells. Further, the Cordyceps militaris has tremendous medicinal properties and it adds to the bioactive component to the synthesis of gold nanoparticles for better penetration. And as such, the biosynthesized nanogold particles indicate a new application of nanotechnology in the development of therapeutic drugs, which can be delivered as ointments, tablets, capsules, and also in other forms. After this, let us try and understand the basics of nanotechnology and its application in the field of medicine. Now, if you go through the prelims examination paper of 2020, you will find that two questions were asked related to emerging technologies and their application. First was related to the artificial intelligence and second was related to the drone technology. So in this regard, the first question read, with the present level of development, artificial intelligence can effectively do which of the following? First is bring down electricity consumption in industrial units, create meaningful short stories and songs, disease diagnosis, text to speech conversion, and wireless transmission of electrical energy. And if you go through the basics of artificial intelligence and its applications, you will find that it can perform effectively all of the applications that are mentioned in the question. The correct answer was D here. Regarding the drone technology, the question read, spraying pesticides on crop field, inspecting the craters of an active volcano, and collecting breath samples from spouting whales for DNA analysis, which was also correct. And the correct answer here again was D, that is 1, 2, and 3. Finally, this question was asked in the prelims of 2018 and it was regarding the 3D printing technology and its application. So the 3D printing technology was applicable in preparation of confectionery items, manufacturing of bionic ears, automotive industry, reconstructive surgeries, data processing technologies. Here again the answer was D, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So what we learn from these questions is that questions are generally asked related to emerging technologies and their applications. And generally, the possibility of applications of such technologies is immense. And accordingly, most of the applications that are required to be identified in the questions in the preliminary examination are correct. And as we have seen in these 3 questions, all of the applications that are related to 3D printing, artificial intelligence, or the drone technology are correct here. So let us learn about the nanotechnology and its application. So what is nanotechnology? It is simply a field of research and innovation that is concerned with building things, generally materials and devices, on a scale of atom or molecules. So nanotechnology is basically concerned with developing materials and devices on atomic or the molecular scale. And what is this atomic or molecular scale? So basically nanotechnology or the nanometer is about 1 billionth of a meter or 10 raised to the power minus 9 of a meter, which means that it governs at such a small scale. And in this regard, the materials are altered or experimented at such a small scale, that is at the nanometer scale. Now what happens because of such alteration is that at such scales, the ordinary rules of physics and chemistry no longer apply. And the general material characteristics, for example, the color, strength, conductivity, reactivity, etc., substantially differ in the materials at the nanoscale as compared to the characteristics at the macro scale. So, for example, carbon nanotubes, which are a result of carbon nanotechnology, are 100 times stronger than the steel and are 6 times lighter. So, this means that when the materials are altered at a nanoscale, it brings about changes in their characteristics. And as can be clearly seen here that the carbon nanotubes can be 100 times stronger than the steel and it can at the same time be 6 times lighter as compared to the steel. So because of such alteration of materials at the nanoscale and the change in the characteristics that is visible, the nanotechnology has immense amount of application. So let us look at the applications of nanotechnology. Now, the various applications of nanotechnology have been covered in the prelims corpus of science and technology. So we are looking at the application of nanotechnology in the medicine field. First is that it can be used for targeted drug delivery. And because of this, the required drug dose can be delivered and the side effects can be minimized. Further, it can be helpful in tissue engineering, antibacterial treatments, wound treatment, cell repair, cancer treatment, imaging. That is, it can be used in ultrasound and MRI technologies. Further, blood purification. It can also be used in neuroelectric interfacing, which is an interesting thing that nano devices will permit computers to be joined and linked to the nervous systems. Finally, it can be helpful in gene sequencing and stem cell technology. So this shows that nanotechnology has application in almost all the fields of medicine. And why is it so? So it is so because of the alteration that is done in the materials and the devices when these materials and devices are altered at a nanoscale. So that is the basic of the nanotechnology and that is why it has immense or huge applications. Now if you look at this infographic, it highlights that nanotechnology has application in almost every field where materials and devices are concerned. So simply, the nanotechnology has applications in textile fields, biomedical field, healthcare, food and agriculture, industrial area, electronics, environment, and renewable energy. And you can see the immense potential that nanotechnology has in terms of its application in the real life scenarios. And accordingly, you can be asked questions regarding the application of nanotechnology. So, as far as we can see, it has no limitation. So, you can expect a question related to the application of the nanotechnology, and do go through the important applications of the nanotechnology, especially in the field of medical, etc.